we have gone 40 minutes and we talked about the Celtics and we talked about the team that failed. And you and I are both intentionally using that word because we're going to come back to that in a second. But I feel like, but it's a story in Miami because like I said, they made history. Nobody had ever gone up 3-0, lost a 3-0 lead the way that they did in epic, historic fashion. And Havlicek stole the ball, and there's a steal by Bird fashion, and come back to win Game 7 on the road. Now, granted, that's their home away from home, but here's another one. I got another one to blow your mind this morning that I read, bro. Check this out. I mean, like we talk about like the flagship franchises in the NBA, Boston, the Lakers, the Spurs. The Heat were founded 35 years ago. You and I are old enough to have been alive for the entire existence of the Miami Heat, for the Ronnie Cycling Miami Heat. They've reached 7 NBA Finals. That's a fifth of all their seasons they've been in the NBA Finals. Pat Riley, relatedly, on a related note, this is his 19th NBA Finals as a player, coach, or executive. That's a quarter of all NBA Finals. It's like, so Heat culture. Like, what do we say about what Miami just did as becoming the second 8th seed to make an NBA Finals, to do it the hard way, without Jimmy Butler being Jimmy freaking Butler the last several games? Maybe the story isn't as much Boston as it is Miami. Did they just lose to, while a lower seeded team, did they just lose to the better constructed, like we're talking about poor roster construction. Did they just lose to the better constructed team, perhaps?
They lost to their exact opposite, like the Spider-Man meme, except in a completely opposite way.
They lost the Venom.
They lost the Venom. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. Boston specializes in beating themselves, right? As we've seen.
Yeah.
The one team in the NBA that is not going to beat itself is the Erik Spoelstra Miami Heat. You may be better than them. You may out-talent them. You may out-execute them, but you're not going to out-prepare them. You're not going to out-scheme them.
Right.
And they're not going to do it to themselves.
Even the Derek White miracle play. People's like, oh, you got to account for the inbound. Oh, you got to box out. They ain't had shit to do with it. That ain't what it's like. They knew what they were doing. Like they still didn't beat themselves. They got beat by a bad bounce. You know,
they got beat by a perfect. It took the perfect shot, the perfect bounce, the perfect circumstances for that series to not end in 6 games. And I tell you this much about Pat Riley: for as many gut-wrenching losses as Pat Riley has suffered in LA, in New York, and Miami, I guarantee you, in a moment of quiet reflection, Pat, would you rather have won this game in Game 6 in Miami and get a couple days of rest before going to Denver? Or would you rather go to Boston and steal the hearts of Boston Celtics fans?
Again? That was worth it.
Pat would say, give me the pain. Give me the pain.
So you can't have pleasure without pain.
Well, never mind. That's a conversation for a whole nother day. And as a single man,
we ain't got nothing but time. We ain't got nothing but time, man.
I'm going to make sure that's like you said. Sometimes the greatest pleasure is accompanied by the greatest pain, or vice versa.
But that was my, speaking of the Heat, that was my D Wade to alley-oop to LeBron.
You thought your arms out?
That was too easy.
But no, I think with Miami, we spend so much time on the undrafted players, Jimmy Butler making fun of Heat culture and all. It's like a punchline. Heat culture now, they're the 8th seed. But they were the 1 seed last year, and if Jimmy Butler puts a little bit more leg into that three-pointer, at the end of Game 7, another Celtics collapse on the road, honestly, then the Heat are going to the finals for a second straight year. And I'll tell you this, Michael. This is parity in the NBA. There is one team from or two teams rather, from 2019 to now. So that'll be 4 NBA finals, 5 NBA finals. 2019, 20, 21, 22,
Yep.
23. 5 NBA finals, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are two franchises that have actually been in multiple NBA finals the last 5 years. It's the Golden State Warriors and the Miami Heat.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been different matchups. You got to think about it. Usually there's a common denominator, Michael, in every NBA final that we've had up until 2019. Remember, you had the Golden State Cleveland years and the Spurs years, or LeBron. And then all of a sudden there were no common denominators. And even before that, it was the Lakers, it was the Shaq Kobe Lakers, it was the Kobe Lakers, it was the Duncan Spurs, the Bulls. It was always a common thread. And now we're getting different teams every year. We're getting no more repeats. But the Miami Heat, who were in the finals in the bubble in 2020, back for more.
Mm-hmm.
That says a lot about this franchise in a way that it feels like there's more parity than ever, that they're able to come from being an 8th seed. And they arguably beat the two best teams in the league in Milwaukee and Boston and beat them essentially handily, right? You can bring up the circumstances. You can bring up them losing 3 games in a row to Boston, but you win 3 out of 4 games in somebody else's building. You are the better team. And at this point, don't we have to stop doubting the Miami Heat?
For sure. No, I mean, look, and that's one of the things that's so frustrating about Jimmy Butler being as passive as he was the last 2 games in particular, is that I have said since the bubble that I don't know that there's a player. I'm not saying he's the best player. I'm not saying if I had if I was starting a team, I'm starting with Jimmy Butler. But if I had a meaningful game to win, give me Jimmy Butler. Like I didn't coin Jimmy effing Butler, but I've been effing with Jimmy Butler for a while, and he's the type of dude that I think has forged a reputation and a legacy independent of whether or not he actually delivers a championship. There's a select few guys like that. There's a select few dudes that we don't hold them not winning a championship against. And maybe it's because of how they came in, the door that they came into. They didn't come in the front door. Maybe we don't hold them to the same standard. Maybe that's unfair. Maybe it's not. But there are certain dudes that, it's like, well, he didn't win a championship. Yeah, but he was a bad motherfucker. I'm saying, like, it's just, and I think that's what Jimmy Butler is. Jimmy Butler, so I'll ask you this, and you and I have been having this conversation, bits and pieces of it offline with the time we got left, and we might need to go a little longer with this. And it's interesting how it's evergreen, it's universal. You and I have been wanting to talk about, speaking of the Bucks, Giannis and his Greek philosophy when it comes to failure, the concept of failure. And I believe, we haven't really gotten deep into it, I believe we're on the same page with this, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts in full. Because from the Celtics standpoint, again, it's interesting. They went from playing with house money to losing at home in Game 7 to now how did they get their house in order? Because, a sweep would have been one thing, a gentleman's sweep, but like once they won those 3 in a row, it became their series to lose, especially with Game 7 at home. So given that they were up against history, even though they were up against history, that feels like a failure. And if as Giannis says, there are no failures in sports, there's only steps to success, I'd be damned if that didn't feel like a step backward for the Celtics.